This video is a sequel to the first video I made about the Espada and their aspects of death and what that really means, and the impact that they left on the rest of Bleach's story. This video is about where their aspects of death can be seen in multiple scenes of the anime, especially in Thousand Year Blood War. Mostly everything is the same because I used a different manga panel this time around, but they basically mean the same thing except for Neutra's, which is despair on this one, and it's not misogyny like the last time. I'm just gonna use despair for this time because, I don't think anyone has time to be misogynistic on the battlefield. And I didn't really feel that emanating from anyone, but feel free to prove me wrong in the comments. And of course, spoilers for Thousand Year Blood War and the last 30 chapters of the manga, which haven't been adapted yet. And as of this video, Core 4 has not been out yet, so if I miss anything from that, oh well. One thing about this video is that the majority of participants of this war, on both sides, both died to sacrifice. Because, Soul Reapers and Quincy's are willing to die for their factions, so. And for everyone who the fight didn't seem very personal to, even though it very much is, their reason for death was sacrifice, because that just feels like it's the default. It's the reason you decided to fight in the first place. Starting with the Arrancar saga. Now, every Arrancar died for the same reason as their trait. Everyone during the Karakura town fight died because of sacrifice, from Shunsui all the way to Yamamoto. But the only person to die for another reason was Hiyori, for rage. Tosen died because of his madness, due to his obsession with justice, leading him to the point where he was at when he sided with Aizen, and eventually turning into an Arrancar himself, succumbing to madness. And Gin, of course, sacrifice. Alright, let's start for real now. I'll organize these by death trait, so it's easier. The first casualty of the war, or one of the first casualties of the war, was Ludus. If you remember, he was that Quincy who Yuabaha had on the floor for arguing with Eburn. And as we know now, infighting is prohibited among Quincy's. This being a sacrifice because he had to sacrifice him to make an example out of him. As for Eburn, who was met with the same fate, Yuabaha said that after he died, he became the foundation to peace. Komamura sacrificed his heart and his life for the sake of revenge. Even though he made fun of Tosen for doing so, he ended up doing the same exact thing. In fact, debatably to a worse degree, as Tosen did not choose to kill himself, but Aizen did it for him, though one stayed on the side of the Soul Reaper and the other to the Arrancar. Ironically, just like Justice, these two balance out just fine. Yamamoto's lieutenant, Sasakibe Chojiro, died for the sacrifice of the Soul Society, and his final seconds living were spent delivering the information at the Quincy's concealed Bankai. Captain Unohana died because of sacrificed herself to make sure Kenpachi was all big and strong. At first glance, marking the Soul King down for sacrifice kind of makes sense, but not quite. Because, these aspects usually reflect the traits of the person, not the outside reasons why they died. When the Soul King was initially held down and dismembered, he did not resist. He sacrificed himself, and let the noble houses split the world into Wako Mundo, the Soul Society, and the world of the living, and the human world. And Yuabaha wanted to free his father from being humiliated eternally. This was the Soul King's sacrifice. Less of his sacrifice, but rather, he was sacrificed. BG9 was that weird robotic Quincy that fought Soifone at one point and got his head cut off by Hashwolf. A little off topic, but this guy is 100% a hollow. He looks exactly like this other hollow that was with Grimmjow at one point. They used to be one of Grimmjow's quote-unquote friends. They only saw him as a robot, so he wasn't that big of a sacrifice to them. He was Arrancar number 11 and Sternritter K, which is the 11th letter of the alphabet. And the hollow's original name, Xiaolong, its last name, also starts with so. Yuabaha employed the use of hollows, so I think it's pretty obvious that this is not just any Sternritter. Kangdu, the Iron, wasted by Hitsugaya. Gerard got his Reishi taken back by Yuabaha mid-fight. He was gonna win. Lloyd, sacrifice. Royd, he was used to waste Yamamoto's time and energy, waste Yamamoto's Bankai, so that Yuabaha could swoop in and take it. Byakuya, sacrifice. He sacrificed himself to save the Soul Society, and he asked Ichigo to do the same. Now to the second most common one, destruction. First up is Driscoll Barrow. He picked a fight with Kenpachi. Askin. He kept on using more and more dangerous attacks, destructive attacks, and he eventually got his heart ripped out by Mr. Destruction himself. The Bambis, because they tried to fight the Soul King while he's asleep, and he had the balance. It was implied that the balance was involved in some way, probably through Hashwolf. Jerome Guizblatt, he fought Kenpachi. The Wind, he thought he was Gojo, and got spiked up by Senjimaru. The Superstar, he's like one of the most destructive Quincy's. He might as well just had the Swift D, the Destroyer, because he really was destroying everybody. But that same destructive ability attracted Ichigo Kurosaki to him. Bernita Parknajaz, Pernita was just trying to shoot Mayuri the entire time they were fighting, and all Mayuri had to do was just throw a couple things at him, and he died. And he was able to take out the Soul King's hand. Quilgeolpi, similar reason to the Superstar. He fought Ichigo, Lilibaro. It got its own destruction reflected at it. Toshiro Hitsugaya, destruction. He went overkill with the ice, as he usually does. Now on to loneliness. Nemu. Now it's pretty obvious that these two have this mother-father relationship, but it seems like both of them deny it. Nemu being a robot, and Mayuri being Mayuri. And Basby died to loneliness as well, due to Hashwolf leaving him alone. Now on to aging. Ukitake, because that was a big part of his entire character. The choice to make his hair white kind of blends in with that as well. He was being led to a worsening state because of the Soul King, so he gave back to it. Sternritter with his Schrift N, he died due to Ashwelin prioritizing younger Quincy's and not him. Bro died because he was old. Now on to Despair. Sixth Seat Kajamaru, the guy who got duped right at the beginning of the invasion and was cut down by Hashwolf in front of his subordinate. Bambietta, as she couldn't defeat Captain Komamura's Bankai, plus the Jinka technique, so she actually turned tail and ran, and her bombs were being thrown at her, and her own bombs were being thrown at her. She couldn't believe the fact that she lost to a Soul Reaper. Now on to Despair. Izurukira, who didn't have a chance to really think. As we know, he did eventually come back, alongside the moon in the background. A leitmotif for Despair in Bleach, symbolizing that he's risen above it. It's actually a thing that someone brought to my attention. I forgot what the channel name was, but it makes sense why Neutra's Zanpakuto is shaped like one. He literally represents it. It's indisputable. Despair is one of the many themes of Bleach. The moon is a constant symbol in Wako Mundo as well. Gremmy, his own despair made his imagination not be able to defeat Zaraki Kenpachi. Next is Madness. Zugrim Hashwolf for abandoning his friend and basically siding with Yuabaha. Also, just look at him. Bob, Madness. The guy who actually owned the Schrift of the Superstar, goes to show for itself. Rage. Genryu Sai Yamamoto. What most people try to do when they're around him is to not tick him off. It's one of his most defining features, when he finally snaps. And you understand all the parts of his rage within his Bankai, which I talked about in this video, you should watch it. Kensei raged that his lieutenant would lose to a guy like this. And then he went on to lose to a guy like this, off screen as well. Intoxication, as not. This is basically ecstasy from Zamari, but, intoxication makes more sense. It's more broad. As not, for one, being intoxicated with his own Schrift, fear, and then losing after feeling such fear. Once again, same reason, the question, intoxication with his own Schrift, asking a bunch of questions to a deaf man. Pepe, intoxication, this is the most disturbing of all. Quote-unquote, love. Such a vile Quincy that he was killed by another Quincy, mid-war. Rose, intoxication with his own Bankai. After that, he got off-screen, just like Kensei. The last trait, greed. Ananana, Najakup, for wanting to still destroy the Shinigami, even though Yuhabaha clearly didn't care about them, as he just initiated Ashwelin. And finally, Yuhabaha, greed. Wanting to become the new Soul King, wanting subordinates, wanting his power back, with interest. After all this, I would like to note that Mayuri did in fact feel despair when Nemu was killed, even though he himself didn't die, which is why I didn't mention it. And when I try to group Aizen, the creator of the Arrancar, into one of these, it really does become apparent that he possesses all 9 of these traits, or all 10 of them. Maybe not the aging part, but the Arrancars were truly created in his image. Yeah, I feel like Askin was too. Look at those two. I feel like that was the first thing that a lot of us thought when we saw Askin. He looks like Aizen. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. I have 745 subscribers right now. Thank you for the last video. I got a bunch of subs from that. Thank you for the good support on the last video. I got a lot of subscribers from that, and people are liking it, so luckily for you guys, I'm very much addicted to everything Bleach right as of now. So I'm probably gonna end up reading the light novels and watching the movies, and I'll make a video about the light novels, and then I'll make a video about the movies, and I'll group the light novels and the Hell arc into one thing. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe. It's a really good way to support me and the channel, and we are shockingly close to 1,000 subscribers at this point. So subscribe before then. You can say you subscribed before 1,000 subscribers. You'll be an OG. And don't forget to join the Discord. I always have the link in the description of every video. And that's it. This has been a Quad ZXY Classic.